Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 367. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the afternoon of Sunday, June the 30th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Topic of today's podcast: Western civilization. Say that three times fast, strong. Western civilization, UFOs, and Jaguars. The car, not the cat. Now, how on earth am I going to put these three together? Stay tuned, and you'll find out why. Today's world is funny, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. So we'll get into the podcast. First, I want to mention two prominent individuals from different sides of the track, broadcasters, that died this week. The first, Al Kresta. Now, most of you probably don't know who he is. He had a radio show on EWTN, the Catholic Broadcasting Network. Actually, he was the president of Ave Maria Radio. That was the affiliate in Detroit. And he died of liver failure at age 72. Tom Monahan, who founded Domino's Pizza, was a big fan of Kresta's. In fact, he's the one who kind of gave him the money to start Ave Maria Radio, and turned into a big thing. Al Kresta, dead of liver failure, liver cancer, at 72. Also, Kinky Friedman died. Now, more of you may have heard of Kinky Friedman than Al Kresta, but most of you probably haven't heard of Kinky Friedman. Kinky Friedman was, he was a Jew, and he was a cowboy, and he ran for governor. He had albums. He was on the Imus in the Morning show quite often. He was an author. He ran for governor of Texas. I think he picked up like 8% of the vote or something like that as a write-in candidate. But he was an interesting guy, funny, entertaining. The name of his group, what the heck was it? It was something like Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys or something like that, okay? But he was tongue-in-cheek. He laughed at himself a lot. Very entertaining. He was an author. I've read a couple of his books. They're goofy, funny, laugh out loud books. But he's been sick for quite some time apparently, and Kinky Friedman died this week at age 79. So let's get into today's podcast: Western civilization, UFOs, and Jaguars. Now, what is this all about? What's this podcast all about? What was the radio show when I was on terrestrial radio all about? Now, even though it's been amended somewhat throughout the years, basically, this show has been since, how long have I been doing this show? 20-something years. Ever since I started on WGNU in St. Louis, and then on to KLPW in Union, Washington, and now the podcast. But it's been about news of the day, but not the headlines, okay? Not the news that everybody's talking about. Translation, there'll be no talk of the Trump-Biden debate in today's podcast, because that's news that everybody's heard about, everybody and their dad has commented on, everybody has an opinion on, and quite frankly, I think it's been talked to death. But there's other stuff going on all the time that is newsworthy, but you, dear listener, probably don't know much about it. Now, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not the great cabal, the Bilderbergs that are trying to keep it off the air. It's not that at all. I mean, where do you get your news? Do you get it off of Facebook where 3/4 of it is made up? I don't know, maybe. Do you get it off of the radio at the top of the hour? Okay, well, there's 4 minutes of news, and of that 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, 2.5 are commercials, so you're not going to get much there. Do you watch the CBS Evening News with fill in the blank on one of the network stations? Okay, well, again, there's a half an hour of news, and about 10 minutes of it is commercials, so you're not going to get all the stuff. In theory, we should know about all the stuff, and I guess we do if you tune into the right sources. There's many media sources, most of which lean to the right or lean to the left. And in that case, I don't consider them media sources. I consider them comment programs, which is nothing wrong with comment programs, but it's not a news source. Okay. If you've got a guy who's just giving his opinion on Fox or MSNBC or whatever, that's a commentary. Rush Limbaugh did not present the news. Rush Limbaugh presented commentary. Okay. If you listen to Rush to get the news, you were misled because Rush commented. If you listen to Rush Limbaugh once upon a time to hear about some topics and witty banter back and forth with his guests or by himself, or and to be entertained while he waxed eloquently on the story of the day, then fine. But there was no breaking news. He was not a broadcast journalist. There's just not a ton of those around. There's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is dyed-in-the-wool journalism doesn't make money anymore. And if it doesn't make money, no one's going to sponsor it, okay? The richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, bought the Washington Times, all right? And was it Washington? No, Washington Post, I'm sorry. He bought the Washington Post. And it's bled millions, hundreds of millions of dollars he's lost. And I think he's about done losing money. So it's tough to get good stories out there. Now, if you look at different news stories and read different sources and find the ones that have been reported on independently and then do a little research on your own, you can find the truth out. And that's kind of what I do on some of these stories, okay? And in many ways, Western civilization, UFOs, and Jaguars, we're talking about the old ones, not the new ones, the ones like the 51 Mark 7 I'm restoring with my dad. If you consider all those in a way, they're similar. And again, it's just, well, how can I put it? Sometimes things aren't as they seem, okay? Okay. So let's link the three together. Western civilization, UFOs, and Jaguars. How am I going to do this? Well, I mean, solutions to this question and all questions, they're like anything else. Most solutions to most questions, the answer is simple. But maybe getting there is not always easy because simple and easy are not the same thing. The obvious and straightest path is rarely taken. And you've also got to remember, there's two sides to every story. Every story, okay? Even the ones that are obvious, there's two sides to every story. Now, let's start with the UFOs, okay? Earlier this week, in fact, I even posted it on my my Facebook page. There was a photo. In fact, it was a top secret U.S. weapon that's baffled online users after being captured on Google Maps. They went back and it's been scrubbed and photoshopped. What? Yeah. Now the prototype, and this was a prototype that was docked in California at a California naval base, and it's now been deleted and scrubbed, and boats were putting in the place that this drone, dubbed the Manta Ray, was docked, okay? Now, they call it the Manta Ray. It's a drone, a big drone that goes underwater. They call it the Manta Ray because it's got a diamond-shaped body and wing-like fans, and it kind of looks like a manta ray. In fact, until recently, engineers at the defense company Northrop Grumman have kept their pioneering design a top secret. But the uncrewed underwater vehicle was unleashed in the water for testing last month, okay? Now, the aerospace firm Northrop Grumman described the sub-drone as a extra-large glider that will operate long duration, long range, and payload capable undersea missions without the need for on-sign logistics. That's according to Northrop Grumman. Now, it's a major development for underwater drone technology because as Manta Ray, it has a very extended range, long-term deployment, and a diverse payload capacity. Now, due to its modular design, it can also be dismantled and transported in standard shipping containers. In other words, take it apart, put it in boxes, send it where you want, and let it go. It also has energy-saving functions that let it anchor onto the seabed and just sit in hibernation mode for a long, long time when not needed because there's no people aboard, okay? Now, if there was an urgent threat, the manta ray could be deployed quicker than traditional submarines. Now, here's the problem. Obviously, the government is trying to hide something because Google Maps caught this photo. Then it was scrubbed, and in the place of the manta ray, there's boats. You may have seen this on the internet. So right off the bat, people think, okay, here we go. This is Uncle Sugar just trying to, nothing here to see, nothing here to see, okay? It's another conspiracy theory because the government is denying the manta ray even exists, okay? And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And I've got my own theory about the government and conspiracy theories, and it's changed over the years. Once upon a time, as I've mentioned before, I was a big conspiracy theorist. And while conspiracies are still out there, dear listeners, here's the dirty little secret about government conspiracies. And to get a proper conspiracy, to get a conspiracy right, do you have any idea how many smart people it takes, and they all have to keep a secret? I'm here to tell you that I'm not sure there's a whole lot of real smart people in government, and none of them can keep a secret. I just got done reading the autobiography of John Brennan, who was head of the CIA, and I call a little slack about reading this from some people because why would you want to read a book about John Brennan? He was a deplorable human being. Well, I wanted to see if that was true. And in an autobiography, sometimes stuff comes out that they wouldn't normally in a biography. Well, I finished it. And John Brennan was a despicable human being. And where did I get the information? He raised his hand and admitted it. Okay. Here's the guy who ran the CIA. And he was a big fan of Obama. Obama was a fan of him. Obama tried to put him in charge of the CIA during his first term, but nobody was having it because the guy had too much controversy. So Obama pulled him out of the nomination and then put him on his cabinet. Okay, so for 4 years, he served in a predominant role in the Obama administration. Next 4 years, he was nominated as CIA director, and he was approved. Okay, so for the last 4 years of the Obama administration, he was director of the CIA. Obama was termed out. Trump won the election. Well, Trump didn't like Brennan, and Brennan didn't like Trump. So he knew he wasn't going to be asked to stay on, and Trump admitted, I'm not going to have this guy stay on. I don't like him. I'm going to replace him. So what does Brennan do? I mean, traditionally, when this has happened, the head of the CIA they stay on till the next guy comes along, then he touches base with him, and then he goes on his merry way into retirement. That's not what Brennan did. Right before Trump was sworn in, Brennan quit. So there was no tie-in with his replacement. Then, after he quit, he went on Twitter like a 12-year-old and slammed Trump. Now, here's the thing. I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. I'll never vote for him. I didn't like the guy, okay? He wasn't a good president, in my opinion. However, he was the president of the United States. And Brennan was the CIA director. The CIA director needs to have some type of allegiance to the president of the United States, whether he likes him or not. He shouldn't go on Twitter like a 12-year-old and call him names. Now, why didn't he like Trump? Because Trump went on Twitter and called people names. So what did Brennan do? He went onto Twitter and called Trump names. I know you are, but what am I? So's your mom, that type of thing. So my reason for going down this rabbit hole is John Brennan ran the CIA for 4 years. When he was done, he went on Twitter, acted like a 12-year-old girl, and then pointed fingers as to why the whole world sucked except for him. And this guy ran the CIA. So I have to think that most people are kind of like John Brennan. In other words, they're not that competent. And when somebody, their skin is very thin, and then when they're done, they write tell-all books. Okay? You're not going to have conspiracy theories work if that's the case, because that's just how people are. Now, the other reason why this manta ray is not a big government conspiracy, I thought I would do some research to see what I could find out about the manta ray. And there were a lot of stories that were, whoa, this is kind of odd. It's we don't know what it is. Does it fly? Does it float? Does it go underwater? Does it do all the above? The government's not telling us. Well, guess what? You want to find out about the manta ray? There's 2 websites you can go on and find anything you want about the manta ray. The first one is the DARPA website. What is DARPA, you asked? It's a government website. DARPA is an acronym for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, okay? And they've got pictures and all kinds of information about the manta ray, UUV. UUV is what's underwater uncrewed vehicle. In other words, it's an underwater drone. The government will tell you anything you want to know about this thing. All you got to do is go on the government website. There's pictures, there's photos. It'll tell you what it does. And Dr. Kyle Wohler, who's the director, tells you everything you want to know. Okay? Now, if that's not enough, go to the Northrop Grumman website. That's the folks who built it. And there's a big article on there, the manta ray, extending undersea excellence. And they talk about what a great thing it is, what it does. It gives its payload capacity. It talks about how it's energy savings, how you can take this stuff and fit it into 5 standard shipping containers and they can ship it anywhere they want. About how it's a leader in undercrewed systems, okay? It shows them how they load it on boats. It shows it diving. It shows it going in the water. It gives you everything you want to know about the manta ray. So if there is a conspiracy theory where the government's trying to hide stuff, they're not doing a real good job. And by the way, the fact is the photo was scrubbed. So somebody in government said, oh, we can't have anybody seeing this. Let's just scrub it. Okay, you want to see a picture of it? Go to the DARPA website. Go to Northrop Grumman website. You'll see all the pictures of the manta ray that you want to see. Now, that's the thing about UFOs. About sometimes people just go off the reservation on UFOs. And the manta ray is not a UFO or a UAP or even an underwater UAP, okay? And they've been running tests in Southern California for a long time. Now, there have been reports of underwater ships in Southern California popping out of the water and going down and all this kind of stuff, and nobody knew what it was. Well, they've been running tests on this manta ray for years in Southern California oceans, so that's probably what it was. So UAPs, UFOs, they are just that, but they're not necessarily men from Mars. Quite often, it's our own guys and our own stuff, and the manta ray is one of them. Now, in Red Rocks, they've seen something that, and this is just 2 days old, it hasn't been explained yet. In fact, Morrison, Colorado, a group of people, more than one, saw a dark metallic disc that appeared north of the Red Rocks Amphitheater about 1:30 in the morning. They actually saw it on June the 5th, but it's just now being reported, which is kind of odd. I mean, why did it take them almost a month to report it? But that's another story for another day. Now, what did this thing look like? Was it just a blimping eye in the sky? No. The amphitheater employees said it was a large disc-shaped craft, and it appeared to have 3 levels of windows. It was as large as a 3-story office building and remained completely silenced throughout its appearance, and it tipped at an angle, headed east, and took off. And more than one person saw it. Never made a sound, never made a noise. Now, what is that? I don't know. We may never find out. This may be a group of people just making stuff up. It could have been the Goodyear blimp, okay? It's 1:30 in the morning at a rock concert venue. You can go ahead and make any assumptions that you want, and some of them might even be true. But there's nothing about this on the Northrop Grumman website. And there's nothing about it on the DARPA website, okay? But certain people either saw something or they're making it up. What is it? Don't know. We have no idea. But we certainly know what the manta ray is. So here's the unknown that the government's trying to cover up, but really nobody's covering anything up. It just makes for good clickbait on the internet. And then you have something that people may be making up, but there's no government cover up because this may or may not be anything that has to do with the government. It may have to do more with whiskey and pot. Who knows? Okay. So let's segue from UFOs into Western civilization. And I've been saying this for a long, long time. When people talk about how bad the economy is, I will say this. I guess it depends. A lot of times it depends on where you are in your life. If you're married with a few children, things are probably tough for you because children are expensive and they're time consuming. And when you're a young person, you're not making as much money as an older person because you haven't been there long enough and your skill set is not where it needs to be yet. So to say that everybody has it easy is different from saying the economy is in good shape. How good a shape is the economy in? Well, let me tell you what happened, a story I heard this week. And this was a story that just, to me, it flew under the radar. I heard it briefly once. And I was shocked that nobody made a big deal of it. In New York City, airlines have raised their hand and voluntarily taken flights out of the equation. They've canceled flights. Okay. Out of this gate, we were doing 10 flights a day. We're now going to do 8. And they voluntarily did this. You know why? Because they don't have enough air traffic controllers in New York City. Air traffic controller job does not take a college degree. It takes training. You got to be smart. You can't take dope. You can't be drunk. You got to show up for work. But you don't have to have a college degree. And it pays $250,000 a year. Okay, let me repeat that. It pays $250,000 a year. $250,000 a year it pays. Well, you got to earn that to be able to live in New York City strong. What's the matter with you? Okay, well, live across the river in New Jersey. Okay, it's a half an hour commute. You can do that. $250,000 a year, and they can't fill the position because people can't be bothered. Why can't they be bothered? Same reason why some people are just lazy. Most people aren't lazy. Most people only work so much at certain jobs because they don't need any more money. They have enough. They have a good enough job. Why bust your tail if you don't have to? Okay? That's how good things are. And at the end of the 20th century, it's kind of like we made it. We got there. Okay? And it's funny because if you look at Western civilization, no time in the history of mankind have things been better. There's no major war anywhere, and there's not been a major war anywhere for a long, long time. Now, you can say, well, Strong, you've got your head in the sand. I mean, look at Ukraine, okay? Look at Ukraine. Other than Ukraine, there's no, I mean, if you live in Moldova, which is right next door, or Poland, which is right next door, there's no war going on there. Now, will it expand into something else? Maybe. We don't know. But for right now, it's very limited. Same thing with the wars in Africa. Same thing with the unrest in other parts of the world. Okay, there's unrest in places. Yes, the Middle East right now. If you live in Gaza, yeah, that's a problem. All right. Northern Israel, where Hezbollah is bombing the heck out of northern Israel right now. That's a problem. But for the most part, for most people in Western civilization, life is hunky-dory. But what are we doing? We're wringing our hands saying, woe is me, things are horrible. And let's take the Middle East, for instance. I'm going to go a little bit off the reservation here because there may be some of you who disagree with me. That's your prerogative. But friends, if you look at the Middle East and all the countries in the Middle East, there is one country with freely elected people or freely elected government. Anybody can live there of any religion, And for the most part, you can do what you want just so you stay within the confines of the law, of the law of the West. Translation, you can't steal from stores. You can't kidnap people, okay? You can't walk around naked. That kind of stuff you go to jail for. I'm talking about you can dress however you want within reason, of course. You can't be naked. You can be any religion you want to. If you don't like the guy running, you can vote against him. You can speak out publicly against the government. There's one country in the Middle East that fits that criteria, and only one: Israel. That's it. Now, what they're doing in Gaza, I'll be the first to admit, I wish they had done things a bit differently than the way they're doing it. However, I can understand why they're doing what they did. Okay? So there's a big movement to just eliminate Israel, eliminate the Zionists, put the Palestinians in charge in all of Israel. Are you kidding? You do know that there's lots of Arabs that live in Israel, and they're very prosperous. In fact, did you know that there's Arabs that sit in the Israeli parliament? They're involved in government. Did you know that there's Arabs that fight on the side of Israel, especially the Druze? Okay, they're Muslims, kind of. I mean, the Druze say they're Muslims. The Shia and the other ones, I forget their name, but they say they're not Muslims. It's kind of like, are Mormons Catholic? Are Mormons Christian? Okay, Mormons say they're Christian. Some Christian religions say, no, you're not, because you don't believe in the Trinity. But that's another story for another day. But yeah, a lot of Druze fight in the Israeli military. How many Jews do you think live in Saudi Arabia? Probably zero, okay? There are no mosques in Saudi Arabia. In the West Bank, there's Jews that live there, but they're settlers that the Palestinians don't want there. They want to get rid of all the Jews. Okay? So the only free country in the Middle East, there's a group of people who just want to get rid of them. Things are very prosperous. Things are very, what do you want to say? For lack of a better word, things are really pretty good everywhere you think, everywhere you look. And in this country especially, anybody who wants to achieve something, for the most part, if they work hard, they can go ahead and achieve it, which is the way things need to be. And it's because we have the most accepting, inclusive society in this country that's ever been known to exist. So why are we losing our minds? I'll give you a story. You ever hear of Tractor Supply? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Tractors, I don't think they have them in East Central Missouri. Maybe they do in the more rural areas. But Tractor Supply has decided a while back they were going to have a big deal with DEI. Now, what is DEI? Diversity, equality, and inclusion. In other words, let's try to include everybody. And in my opinion, DEI is in some ways the modern day version of inclusive laws that where you can't discriminate against black folks, where you can't discriminate against women. DEI was to be all inclusive, but it expands into gays, lesbians, transsexuals, everything. You name it, it includes it. And you want to be all inclusive for all these people. Now, in my opinion, it's smart for a business to accept DEI. And why do I say that? Well, because business is tough. And if you exclude anybody who has talent and their competition gets a hold of them, then you're going to suffer. So from a business standpoint, DEI makes perfect sense. And by the way, with very few exceptions, DEI is the law. You can't not hire somebody because of their sexual orientation. You just can't do it. You can't hire somebody because of their color or their sex or their fill in the blank. You just can't. And here's where business made a misstep. And now they're misstepping once again. These companies, they embraced DEI, not just to the point where let's go ahead and just consider everybody for employment, regardless of sex, creed, race, sexual orientation, fill in the blank, religion. Let's consider everybody. That was smart. And then they started to say, well, let's go one step further because people seem to like this. And if they like us hiring everybody, they'll just love if we make multi-million-dollar donations to their dopey causes. Okay. So Tractor Supply decided they wanted to embrace and accelerate on DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. But they started donating all this money to these dopey causes. And one of them, I should have written this down. Here we go. It was a $10,000 donation from Tractor Supply to the LGBTQ program at a youth center in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. Now, a youth center, that's a bit bizarre to me. Why do you need to give money to an organization like that? Well, because everybody needs to be philanthropic, right? Sure. If you're a smart business person, why would you give money to, and you want to give money so that people really like you? Give money that includes everybody, that is inclusive, okay? First of all, if you go to an LGBTQ youth center, friend, you are a very small microcosm, and that's not very inclusive at all. Why don't you give money to fighting cancer, something that everybody gets, okay? Maybe Alzheimer's, who, if you're going to live long enough, you're going to get it, okay? Or you know somebody with it. Or how about poverty? Or how about affordable housing, okay? How about drug addiction? Okay, I could go on and on and on, okay? Well, Tractor Supply, the people who shop at Tractor Supply, let's just say that the LGBTQ community, that's not where most of them are shopping, okay? Most of the people that shop at Tractor Supply are farmers who couldn't give two shakes about that kind of stuff, and it's come back to bite them. So what have they decided to do? That's it. No more DEI at Tractor Supply. So they went from one extreme to the other. They went from we're gonna donate money to an LGBTQ youth program to F this, we're not hiring the gays. What the heck? Why would you do that? Well, they say because they want to go ahead and embrace their the people that buy their stuff. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Business is pretty basic, okay? Give the customer something that he wants, make it a fair price, a quality product, and make it readily available. And have your salespeople smile when they shop. That helps too, okay? Don't do dopey things like that. Don't do dopey things like we're going to give money to organizations that are just bizarre. And then, by the way, when that doesn't work, don't go the other route and say, we're not hiring anybody except for these folks. It's stupid. We've got things so good and we can't leave well enough alone. It's almost like we just have to break it. Good enough never is. You got a batter who went 5 for 5 in the baseball game last night. He batted 1,000. He hit 5 home runs. So what are you going to do tonight? Well, I'm going to go ahead and look at the films to see how I can do better tomorrow. You can't do better. You hit 5 home runs. Leave it alone. We're all wired to where good enough never is, but sometimes good enough is good enough. Leave it alone and do something else. Tractor Supply. Come on. Which leads me to part 3. The 1951 Jaguar Mark 7. I haven't been talking a ton about this car because to the casual listener, there's not a whole lot being done with this car. In fact, if you had walked into the shop 2 months ago and then walked into the shop yesterday, you'd looked at me and you thought, Strong, what have you been doing here every Saturday? There's nothing else done. Well, there's been a lot done, but nothing you can see. It's all the behind the scenes stuff. It's cleaning stuff up. It's painting stuff. It's putting it back into working condition. Case in point, yesterday I worked on this thing I took Friday off work, worked on it on Friday with Dad, worked on it Saturday by myself. So all I had to do was slap the doors together. Okay. Well, guess what? The bolts that held the inside door handle onto these, 3 or 4 had broken. Great. I'll just run up to Lowe's and pick up some bolts. So what I needed was a 1032 flathead screw with an 82-degree chamfer that had 1 inch of threads on it. That's what I needed. And I didn't need something, and you can get cheap fasteners at Lowe's. I didn't want a cheap fastener. I wanted a grade 5 or 7 or stainless steel, one of the 3. They didn't have it. Okay, well, I can go ahead and just get a regular one and turn it down, but it wouldn't be what I wanted. I could order something from Fastenal or McMaster Carr on Monday when they open, and then I wouldn't have it by this weekend because of the holiday. So in 2 weeks, I could work on this thing again. It was time to put this thing back together. That day, I didn't want to wait 2 weeks. So I bought stainless steel panhead screws, turned them down to the right diameter, the heads, put an 82-degree chamfer on them on my lathe, and I assembled everything. Done. Now, that took the trip to Lowe's and the machining, and I had to build a fixture to hold these things, of course, because you just can't chuck these up on a lathe. You'll damage the threads. I found a piece of steel, drilled a hole through it so deep, so I screwed the part into the fixture, left the fixture in the chuck so it was concentric. And then everything turned out great. Okay. It's fantastic. But it took 4 hours to do all that. And I put this on my Facebook page just because a lot of folks ask, hey, what are you doing? What's taking so long? Aren't you done with that car yet? This is the kind of stuff that happens almost every week. In fact, something that you didn't hear, dear listener, is when I put this thing back together, then one of the windows wouldn't roll up. Well, guess what I found out? On the passenger windows, you need a 1-inch screw. On the driver's side windows, you need a 3/4 inch long screw. If it's 1 inch long, it interferes with the mechanism that rolls the window up. So I had to take it and turn it down, put it back in. That took a little bit more time. That's just the stuff that you run into. Now, people have said, why don't you just order that stuff online? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you do that? Just do this. Just do that. It's easier. It's simple. It's more basic. It's a lot. You're wasting too much time. What am I trying to accomplish with this car? I've mentioned this countless times. I'll mention it again. This car, if I were to get this thing fully restored and if I didn't spend a dime on it, I'd be upside down. Forget my time, just money I've spent having people do stuff and buying things. I'm already upside down on this thing by a large margin. It's not something I bought and I'm restoring so I could sell at a profit. It's not a business. It's a hobby. Okay. What am I trying to accomplish? I spend Saturdays with my dad, my 88-year-old father, putting this thing together. It's so much fun. He's having fun. I get to spend the afternoon working on old cars with my dad. Okay. And when we're done, we get something accomplished. And you see how the Brits put things together, which it's very interesting. But friends, the way they looked at things, I have no idea how once upon a time they ruled the world. I have no idea. But it is very cool. They're engineering marvels. They're works of art, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a hobby. Asking me, and this is where there's two sides to every story, okay? This is where look at what you're trying to accomplish. So when you ask me, aren't you done with that thing yet? And I say, no. Well, what are you waiting on? What are you doing? Why are you dragging your feet? This is a whole lot of like asking, what'd you do today? Well, I went on a bike ride today. Oh, really? Well, do you have enough miles in to quit? And they're going to look at you. No, I ride this bike because it's fun. I'm not riding a bike to hit some type of mileage mark and then quit. Same thing with this car. This car will never be finished. Even when it's running, I'm driving it down the street. I'm going to hear a squeak or a bump or a noise, or I'm going to look at something and say, I can make this better. Let me build a part on my lathe or on my mill and replace this with that and make it just a little bit better. I'll do that forever until I die, probably. And that's why I'm saying there's two sides to every story. With the UFOs, yeah, sometimes we see something that we don't know what it is. But if we see something and the government is appearing like it's trying to cover it up, maybe they're not trying to cover it up at all. Maybe they don't care if you look. But if you look past the nose on your face, you'll see that there's no conspiracy at all. Rather, it's just another weapon in the arsenal of the U.S. military. Western civilization, friends, we have it so good right now, it's scary. In fact, we have it so good right now, we don't believe it, and we're trying to make it worse. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make it worse. And as far as the old Jaguar goes, when people give me trouble about, well, do it like this, it's more efficient. Or do it like this and you'll get finished sooner. I'm not trying to do things efficiently. I'm not trying to get it finished sooner. Turning those parts down on a lathe, you couldn't, what I made, you cannot buy. Okay? Because it just wasn't a standard flathead screw that you can just put in and be done with. This is stainless steel. I machined the angle on it itself. I left enough of the head so it's going to fit into the handle a lot better and looks better when you're looking down on it. It looks a whole lot better than anything you buy at the store. And it took 4 hours out of my life, which, by the way, was an enjoyable time. Western civilization, UFOs, and Jaguars. There's two sides to every story, dear listeners. And sometimes the goal trying to be achieved by the individual has nothing to do with the goal that you think that individual should be achieving. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Send me an email. I love getting emails. I suspect I'll get a few emails on this one. Texts, emails, instant messages. You can do it all. I'm there. That's it. We're done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.